Welcome back to this session on green belts. This whole idea of a green belt is a really interesting thing. I can't tell you how much this role has evolved over time to become an extremely viable, efficient, and powerful force in an organization. And I use the word force, like you've heard the term police force. A force being a group. They represent a force as collective group of individuals. Now, we recognize that in terms of scope and depth, we've got out here the boundaries of a black belt, whereas the boundaries of a green belt are a little less than the boundaries of a black belt in terms of scope and depth as well as their business reach. However, by virtue of their sheer quantities, they constitute a force that can often surpass that of the force of the black belts in an organization. Let's say, for example, that we have a company that's organized in a matrix by geographical region and by product line. Product line A, B, C. For example, in automobiles, that could be heavy-duty vehicles, medium-duty, and light-duty vehicles. By North America, South America, Europe, and so on. Now, given that, if that company has 100,000 people, and these 100,000 people are split up in these cells, and inside of every cell is an autonomous business, what we find is that we may wind up with a business unit of 2,000 people or less. Now, for that business unit of 2,000 people, it may only require to say 10 black belts. That might be all they might be able to justify. Now, I don't know those are the right numbers. Every circumstance is different, but this gives the idea. Now, in turn, they might be able to, because of this, justify creating 200 green belts. Well, you can begin to see that the leverage here of the green belts, because of the cost of training, the time of training, the scope and size of projects, etc., may not be able to justify the intervention of a black belt, but certainly might be able to use a green belt for it. So 200 green belts with a few black belts might be the answer for such an organization in this kind of a situation. We see this a lot when it comes to the deployment and implementation of Six Sigma. Now, along those same lines, we can sometimes take a black belt project and break it down into subordinate projects. So this would be a green belt project, whereas the totality would be a black belt project. But we don't have a black belt. Our organization is smaller. Maybe we've only got about 500 people in the organization, and we don't have a black belt. But what we do is describe a black belt project, break it down into its elements, and take each element and make it a green belt project. Now, that's another strategy of how to go and use a green belt. So you can see that green belts provide a tremendous amount of flexibility. And I want to use that word there. For an organization. So you can get high flexibility at low cost in a short cycle time and devise a very strong force of viable, efficient, powerful individuals in terms of problem solving. It's not quite as strong as a black belt, but can have an enormous amount of impact in the organization. That's the fundamental logic behind a green belt.